Welcome back. We have all heard of Gold Star mothers, women who have lost a son or daughter in combat. Their symbol, a Gold Star flag, and these mothers are entitled to federal hiring preferences. Well, now, fathers, they will soon have that same recognition. Our senior political producer, Karen McBride, explains.
Thanks, Rich. That's right. Earlier this month, President Obama signed into law the Gold Star Fathers Act. And for Joe Nolan of Connecticut, this designation is very personal, as it helps him keep his son's memory alive.
I'm a stubborn Irishman, and we need to keep my son's memory alive, and of all our veterans, both living and deceased. You know, kind of reminiscing a little, talking a little bit about Joe. I think it's really important for that people know, you know, the human cost of war.
Joey Nolan, a military intelligence expert, was killed in Iraq in 2004 when his vehicle was struck by an explosive device. His father, a Vietnam veteran and former Marine, has been fighting ever since to keep Joey's memory alive. And U.S. Rep. Elizabeth Esty of Connecticut has helped him accomplish that. She introduced the Gold Star Fathers Act in the House.
The modern reality is that we recognize that fathers grieve and cry and miss their children just as much as mothers. And so when I was meeting with a group of Gold Star families about a year and a half ago, actually on Memorial Day in Waterbury, someone I hadn't met before, Joe Nolan, one of the fathers, came up to me and said, you know what, when I lost my son in Iraq, I realized that the fathers get forgotten. And I really took that to heart, and I really thought about it, especially because my niece at that time was serving in Afghanistan, and I knew if anything had happened to her, that my brother-in-law would have cried and grieved just as much as my sister-in-law. So this is a way we can recognize those who have served our country and honor the families who when we tragically aren't able to bring them home.
And tell us what this means for the families who will be eligible.
What this means is that the mothers as well as the fathers can qualify not only for recognition, but in this case for having the veterans' preference for hiring to work for the federal government. So not only have families lost a loved one, but actually they've oftentimes lost income as well, and this allows the mothers and the fathers to apply for that benefit, and that support and recognition of the American people for their sacrifice.
And it's that recognition that's so important to Joe Nolan.
Joe was, I mean, I realize I'm a little biased, but you know, he was a great kid. His mother actually had a great sense of humor, and Joey, I think, inherited that. And he was, you know, it's not that I favored him or anything like that, but he was a very, very kind of easy to get along with, likable kid. And he was a very, very, you know, good student. He loved to read, you know, from a really early age, but he didn't want people to know that he liked to read because he didn't want people to think that he was a nerd. He was really interested in history. And when he was in 7th grade in middle school, there used to be a priest that lived in Waterbury that used to organize these sports trips around the world. Well, one time he organized, it wasn't a sports trip, it was an academic trip to Russia. The priest, his name was Father Cashy, he actually passed away a couple years after Joey died. And he organized a trip to Russia for middle school students from the Waterbury area. And Joey ended up going. Again, he was only in 7th grade, and they were gone for about a month. And they actually had teachers from school go with them, so their studies weren't interrupted or anything, you know. But they actually spent time with other, you know, Russian students. And don't forget, this is before the fall of the Iron Curtain. So I think that trip to Russia had a big, big impression on him.
Was that what influenced Joey to join the military?
I know it had an influence on him. I didn't even know. When Joey was in Philadelphia, he graduated from college, St. Joseph's University, and he had majored in, as I mentioned to you earlier, or minored in Japanese, and which was a little unusual because that's not really a big major at St. Joe's. But he finished 4 years of Japanese, and he actually joined the Army without telling me. I didn't realize initially that he had joined. And the Army has a big language school in California. he took the test for that and he scored well on it. So after boot camp in Missouri and everything, he ended up going out there.
Tell us about that fateful day.
Exactly what he was doing the day he died, I'm not sure. You know, they were involved in the operation in Fallujah, which was a Marine operation. I also know that when Joe did go out like that, he had bodyguards. And in this particular operation, or this particular day that he went out, outside of Fallujah, his people that were protecting him were actually Marines. Marines in armored vehicles. And I know, you know, months and months before he went overseas, I had mentioned to Joe, I said, you know, based on my own experiences, I said, you know, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, make sure, you know, that you always wear your helmet, make sure that you always have your flak jacket on, and make sure that, you you always carry extra rounds. You know, I don't care if you're in the city or even just going back to the base. Make sure you always have extra rounds with you and you know, keep yourself protected. And Joe did all that. He followed all that. And then they were returning anyway from a motorized patrol, and an IED went off. And he was in something called an up-armored Humvee, which is a Humvee that had been reinforced with extra armor, extra steel. But apparently a small piece of shrapnel came through the back and struck him, I'm going to guess, between his helmet and his flak jacket in the back here. And he suffered a severe, you know, wound. And he actually was, they were only like a mile from what I was told, from Camp Fallujah, which was a Marine base. So they got him, you know, to a sick bay. Then they medevaced him to an Army hospital in Baghdad. And unfortunately, he died about 6 hours later.
Nolan also told us about what was found in the Humvee where Joey was killed.
About a month went by, and I got a package in the mail. And in the package were these 3 books. And they found these 3 books on the floor of the Humvee where he was sitting. One was a travel guide to the Middle East. One was an Arabic-English dictionary. And then the other, Henry David Thoreau Walden. So these are kind of, in a nutshell, kind of sums up my son.
Nolan has been working for more than a decade to help honor his son's memory. He and other Connecticut families were instrumental in the creation of Gold Star license plates.
The DMV, though, they told me if 7 people are issued that plate, that would be a big number. And at last checked, and this is a couple years ago, over 204 plates have been issued. I mean, obviously I wish none had been issued, but I've actually met people who, I met this Gold Star mother from Waterbury who lost her son. Her son would have been my age. He was killed in Vietnam in 1968. She said, nothing has been done for my son in 50 years until this plate came along. And so she was grateful. So to hear that, I felt that, you know, that was worthwhile.
I asked Nolan what Joey would think of all of his efforts.
I think he would, you know, it would appreciate it. I mean, I'll have to say, I can't bring him back. I miss him, you know. Obviously we love him, we miss him. We've raised well over $100,000. Some of the money we give to local, you know, scholarship funds in Joe's name and to PAL and places like that, but most of the money goes to a trust fund at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia. But the idea with that is that's going to go on, you know, long after we're not here. You know, those are the kinds of things that are important, and another good way to keep Joe's memory alive and help another person at the same time.
So clearly this is very important for a lot of parents here now, both parents who've lost a child in terms of them moving forward. But it's very clear from this dad, he never wants to forget the memory of his son, right?
Absolutely, Rich. And you've seen from some of the things he's done, many of the efforts, that he is really working hard and very persistent in keeping his son's memory alive.
Well, he really shared his story with you. It's a great story. It's a great organization as well. We encourage you to check it out. Coming up next, everyone, we're going to have our Hudson Valley headlines, so please stay with us.